Hello, welcome. Welcome to our fourth webinar on topics that concern floor coverings and the environment where Forbo has a relation with. My name is Willem Bermanje. I am the Strategic Communications Director at Forbo, and I will be your host for the coming hour. I started this webinar with a video, and that came because I was thinking of how to introduce the topic of designing better indoor environments. And for us, this video is quite important. It came from 2015, and at that time it marked a turnaround in the way we were thinking. Before that time, whenever we talked about Forbo, we talked about our products. We talked about how they were being produced. We talked about the LCA of the product. We talked about the EPD, the product passport. We talked about quality, sustainability, all related to our products. But the thinking changed. The thinking changed towards that of the end user. Not only in our industry, but it happened everywhere. The end user looks at your products in a very different way. The end user experiences your products. So then the idea of comfort, well-being, and health become much more prominent. And that's very much the way that we are designing our products and collections and the combination of products and collections today. Therefore is also for us the idea to talk about the environment in relation to the indoors, in relation to well-being of people, such an important topic. I'm very happy that today I will be joined by two people, by two experts in their own right. They are, I should say it right, Michal Marszalek and Ben Channon. Now, Michal is a commercial associate with the International Well Building Institute. Now, the Well Building Institute, actually established in 2014, has sort of formalized what I was talking about, has sort of formalized health and well-being by developing a rating system to which people can check their building and their designs. Michal will be talking about the content of the Well Building Standard. And after that, I will be joined by Ben. And Ben is a director at Ecist Advisory and also has a title of Well Mind Advisory. We will talk about that a little bit later. Now, Ecist Consultancy is an expert on the design, creation and management of buildings and places that support human health and well-being. So Ben will be talking to us about how he is using the standard from the Well Building Institute. First, we will go to Marszalek, to Michal Marszalek. There also is a volleyball player of that name, Michal, but I guess that is not you. No, it's not you. Good. Maybe we can then, of course, we have established that we have the right person. Maybe you can start your presentation so that we can, after you've shared your screen, hear all about the Well-Being Institute.
Yeah. So thank you, William. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I'm very pleased that I can present my point of view and our company approaches the subject of indoor environments. So my name is Michal Marszalek. I've joined the Europe team at EWBI this year, and I support mainly the commercial team and EMEA region on coaching market development with the role of technical account manager. So today I would like to present some tools that can be used to improve our indoor environment, as we have this topic on the main page. So first I would like to say something and introduce our company. So our mission at EWBI is simple. We have recently updated it, describing as a company as the trusted authority on health and well-being from buildings, whether it's our home, office, hospital, school, also for organizations and communities, and that we help organizations focus on creating people-first places. So in simple words, Well supports people and businesses instead of leading with a building-focused narrative. And what is a roadmap? It's a roadmap to mitigate record levels of stress, burnout, decrease attrition, increase productivity, understand people's experience from mental health resilience to employee engagement in a workplace. We know both of which greatly impact business outcomes and success. Foster diversity, equity, and inclusion to make healthy places accessible to all, which is really important nowadays. Attract top talents, achieve leadership awards in industry recognition, and also get back to business with confidence, especially nowadays during COVID pandemic situation. This is our vision of how well can evolve to meet the needs of the future. But I would like to also say something about development of well briefly. So when it comes to well development, in 2014 we first launched the well building standard, which is a singular building certification targeted largely to the commercial office spaces. It rests on a solid foundation of science, evidence, and research, including a 6-year expert peer review process. After gaining more experience, know-how, feedback from the market, it became, like for us, it became more evident that certification of buildings was the first step. And we understood that our decision about standard and our work must also include people. So that's why our development of new version of well, 2017-2018, the well version 2 pilot emphasized strategies that would help organizations to scale well-being strategies to impact more people in more holistic ways, like, for example, operational protocols, policies, and in this way that helps companies foster a culture of health of an entire company and also their employees. The next step in which we also wanted to make it easier for well to serve the needs of organizations. So it was we moved from a building by building approach to an approach that allowed us to support companies in scaling and leveraging well across an entire portfolio. So this is why we released well portfolio with the well portfolio score, which is intended to represent progress towards health outcomes, adjustments in goals and strategy, what is important on an annual basis, and continual improvement across an entire organization in a long-term journey. Then 2020, we will all remember this date when the pandemic became. During this time, we created health and safety rating as a response to this pandemic. To the pandemic, it's what is important. It's this rating is made up of a subset of well version 2 features. So in this way, we ensure that this rating was an application of our core standard well certification, not a reinvention or something new. But I will say something more about this rating later, because this is mainly and this is connected with also today topics, indoor environments. I will say more about this. And finally, in 2021, we announced plans for our next rating, the well performance rating, which will be a designation to benchmark building performance and the health and well-being outcomes of people. This rating is also comprised of a subset of strategies from within the well system. So for us, this is evolution, not revolution. So few information regarding demand for well, which appeared especially recently after 2020. So we have seen adoption of well grow rapidly, as I said, particularly in the last year. So you can see doubling enrolled square feet. So for now, we have more than 2,000 organizations, including over 80 of the Fortune 500 that have adopted well as a their roadmap. So more or less, information about our company, right now I would like to concentrate on our today's topic, indoor environment, and present it as a explaining it with our well tools. So well is integrated system that provides the best practices to follow, we can say in this way. We have a lot of requirements, so I will try to not present specific solutions, but what is really important, and this is why I presented this in this way, companies can prioritize strategies based on well, and in this way can improve indoor environment within their project. So they can create goals, they can create strategy using well certification. And here are some examples: support indoor environmental quality. Companies might to obtain prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, or enhance climate and sustainability strategy. These goals can be based on our 10 concepts. Below concepts, I presented examples of features which might help to achieve these goals, specific goals. So in this way, we are not talking only about concepts and requirements, but in more broader way, we can like create strategy, create goals, internal goals for each company, and or each company can create these goals. And following well certification, it will be much easier to obtain and achieve aims. And here we have other examples like reopen safely and with confidence, reduce employee stress and burnout, and foster employee engagement and retention. So from my perspective, these goals can improve indoor environment. When we are talking about indoor environment, from my perspective, it's not only about like design or implemented solutions. This is also about some kind of behavior, policy, or operational aspects. And because we are talking about flooring systems today, so I would like to present one concept in more details, the well materials concept, advances two strategies for selecting buildings, materials, and products. One is to increase literacy on materials by promoting ingredients disclosure. And the second is to promote the assessment and optimization of product composition to minimize impacts to human and environmental health. Both strategies aim to bridge data gaps in the supply chain. In this way, also support innovation in green chemistry and advancing market transformation towards healthier and more sustainable project. So this is exactly what was mentioned, or we could see on a movie, like products should be highly hygienic, safe, and like nice to use, comfortable to use. So more about materials concepts, some details. We have 3 preconditions in well certification, so obligatory requirements, 9 optimizations. We can gain 18 points in well certification, 20 points in core certifications. In core certification, I highlighted features which are related to flooring systems. So for example, on this slide, we can see like only like name of features, but I will say some describe some examples that, for example, products shouldn't contain specified amount of asbestos, are tested to meet methods and threshold established in one of described standard, which is available in well certification for volatile organic compounds. This is really important when it comes to indoor air quality in our spaces that we live and spend our time. Some examples of certificates like EU Ecolabel or California Department of Public Health standard method. Also products or ingredients shall be disclosed by the manufacturer, disclosure organization, or a third party through one of described labels. So in this way, we are sure, or we have proved, that quality or standard of this project is really, really high. But what is really important from my perspective, and what is available in WELL certification, depending on the location of the project, different laws, different regulations, codes, or programs may be more relevant than what is like described in WELL certification in WELL feature. And EWBI accepts proposals for equivalences to be used interchangeably. So this is really important. We can propose if we don't see something in our certification, we can ask for approval, present, describe appropriate this standard, and it might be situation that EWBI will accept our proposition. And the second option is that we can propose also alternative adherence path. So it's a strategy that may diverge from a WELL feature exact requirements, but still meets features intent and support a similar outcome. So we can propose something from our experience from our previous projects. We suppose that it will be properly done, or it will be better to use, but we should keep intent of the feature, and then we can like propose, and it might be also accepted. So why I'm telling this, because someone who will read like WELL certification for the first time might be like, will see a lot of requirements, might be situation that some of them will be not appropriate for the project, but for this project that he's trying to build, but we have some alternative solutions that we can like propose, and in this way adjust. And I can honestly say that WELL certification is quite flexible certification. So in this way, it's easier to obtain final certificate. Some examples why, yeah. All right, so a few examples. Only information on this is that WELL is appropriate for every type of building, small companies, retail spaces, co-working areas. Or WELL certification is also like can be connected with sustainable development goals. So only information, because I'm running the time, 80% of WELL features are aligning with 16 of the sustainable development goals. We know that these goals are really important nowadays for many companies. And another tool that I would like to just briefly describe is crosswalk documents. So we can like align or combine two certificates, like WELL certification with other popular certificates on the market, and in this way try to obtain both of them, and it might be like documentation can be streamlined. Few words about health and safety rating. As I mentioned, it was created as a response for pandemic situation, and in general, the health and safety rating focus on operational policies in this way to facilitate a healthy and safe workplace or facility, maintenance protocols to reduce the risk of infectious disease transmission, and emergency plans to safeguard building user. And the last one, stakeholder education and engagement. Education and awareness is really important. Health and safety rating in general includes 20 features across the following core areas, which are visible here, and minimum of 15 need to be met. So each of these core areas has more requirements, and 15 is necessary to obtain to gain rating. As an example, Skanska project. I was one of the people responsible for this process prior to join EWBI. So it was 9 projects at the same time. So in this way, for Skanska, it was really crucial to prepare spaces for re-entry in a post-pandemic area. So 9 projects across 3 countries: Poland, Czech Republic, and Romania. And to sum up, I just wanted to briefly describe how our tools or certification is connected or can improve the indoor environment. So briefly, I mentioned about our concept. We can create goals and strategy internally in our company. We have appropriate guidance. At the end, we can gain recognition or use this as a marketing tool. And also, if we try to create strategy based on ESG because well is certification connected with health. It might be helpful to use also well for ESG reporting. The last slide, I promise, movement of leaders join the well AP community. I would like to encourage everyone to register to exam and then become a well AP. In this way, it may cause that it will differentiate person on a market, in the market, adapt. It will be helpful to someone to adjust well certification or only for our internal satisfaction. So internal satisfaction. So highly recommend to well. If you were interested, of course, you can contact me and I can describe more information. But right now, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you find it interesting.
Okay, thank you very much, Michal. We will now have a screen where we are both visible. And there's one question, actually also a question coming from the audience already. All of you listening to this webinar, you can ask questions, and after the presentation of Ben, there will be a session of about 20 minutes where we will pick out some of the questions and make sure all the other questions are answered. It's a question coming from Paul Ajiboli. And it's about what you announced that has happened in 2021, the announcement of the well performance rating. The question is, there's been quite some interest in this well performance rating. Do you already know when the final product will be available?
Unfortunately not. It's only announced right now. We are internally discussing it when officially it should be announced, but it will be connected mainly with performance outcomes of people, of health and well-being. So right now I cannot confirm the final date when it will be officially announced or available.
I will not push you because I have no idea what work is involved, but do you think it's a matter of weeks or months or a year?
I would like to avoid this information because I have no idea right now.
Okay, maybe there are some more questions on the topic.
It's ongoing process. So
it's ongoing. Very good.
In
That's also in fairness what you said. You announced that you were going to do this. Okay, good. Thank you for now, Michal. I will move to Ben Channon. Like I said, he is a director at Ecist Advisory, and he is also a Well-Mind Advisory. Ecist is a consultancy, designing, architect agency. It doesn't say that exactly, but you are concerned with the designing, creation and management of buildings and places that support human health and well-being. Your presentation is also titled Designing for Well-being, so we're very interested to hear that. It's always interesting that when you meet people that you haven't met before, that there's a link that is quite unexpected. Because when I was looking up Ecist, I saw that your offices are in Guildford or Godalming, and that is just exactly the place where some 30 years ago I've been living for 3, 4, 5 years. So I can say that the location of your office is excellent if you are a well-building advisory specialist. There's nowhere in the UK there's more green and lawns and small little villages like in Surrey. Ben, we're interested.
Small world, Willem, absolutely. Yeah, we're actually still all working remotely because there's so much uncertainty. But I think eventually we will end up heading back into London. Slightly less green, but lots more amenities. So it balances out. Okay. Shall I try and share my screen?
If you would like to do that, yes, please.
Perfect. Okay. I think we just need to rescale that, don't we?
No, that's going to happen automatically. There you are. We can see it clearly. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Willem. So yes, as you said, my presentation is all about really designing for well-being, and of course, that's really what we're focused on at Ecist. Not just interiors, we're focused on the whole project, but we can focus more on interiors today, absolutely, as that's kind of the theme of the day. A little bit about us, as people never seem quite sure who we are. As you kind of alluded to, Willem, we're actually not architects. My background is in architecture. I trained as an architect, but we are actually a consultancy firm, and our entire remit really is to step in and help project teams and developers and clients who effectively want to implement the well building standard or who want to create healthier places. So I'd say probably about 80% of what we do is using the well building standard at the moment. But then, as I'll come on to explain, that we have other ways as well to bring health and well-being ideas onto projects too. So I think it's quite a nice pairing. Myself and Michal being able to Michal presenting what well is and the thinking behind it, and we're almost we're the boots on the ground. We are the people who are working on this every day, putting this into real life projects. And helping teams to achieve well certification. So hopefully you guys will get to see both sides of the coin. As I've said here, we're a team of experts or specialists in creating healthier places, and we come from a range of backgrounds, whether that's architecture, myself, or other people in the team have a specialization in nutrition or fitness or surveying or all kinds of different backgrounds. But we have a number of well-accredited professionals, those well APs, that Michal was telling you about as well, including myself. So we are basically able to guide people through that well process. And we're really passionate about, getting well-being into projects, making sure that every project that gets designed or that we work on is as healthy as it can be. And the reason, one of the real reasons we're so passionate about it is because, there is an incredibly strong evidence base that not only does healthy design obviously impact our physical health, but again, as Michal was alluding to, it can improve productivity, staff retention, all of these things. But really, there's a really strong ethical case, we believe as well, that we have a responsibility. If we're working in the construction sector, if we're building places that people are going to live or going to work in, or our children are going to go to school in, they deserve to be healthy places, and we owe that to people. We're also finding a lot of clients are approaching us who want to bring well on board. And as Michal said, 80 of those 500 of those Fortune 500 companies are now starting to use well, and we're seeing a real growth in the last few years because there's this idea that it does help you stand out from a very crowded marketplace. Because sustainability, obviously, it's so important, it's become so embedded in everything that we do that actually it doesn't really make you stand out from the crowd anymore. It's not a unique selling point. So actually, by creating a healthier building, that's a way that you can get an advantage on your competition. We know that it adds value. Of course, if you're having better staff retention, lower staff turnover, better staff productivity and output, of course, that offers value for your tenants as well. So there's a lot of research now showing that if a place is designed to be healthy, there's also a real financial case behind that. And as I said, of course, that very, very strong ethical case too. So some of the key areas that we tend to look at, we kind of break it down into three real areas, really. So there's the kind of architecture and design side of things, which is probably the first thing that comes up when we start talking to teams. And that can really be everything from where are you putting a building on a site, or how are you orienting it? Because that's going to affect how much light you get into a project, whether it's going to overheat, whether you can naturally ventilate it, all of these kind of things, the acoustic conditions. But then, of course, as the design develops, we're going to start thinking on a much more detailed scale. Some of those things that Michal was talking about, whether that's materials, whether it's things like floor to ceiling heights, all of these things can again have an impact on people's health and well-being. Particularly obviously important in interiors, some of those issues. We'll then tend to find that the services team will come on board, the M&E engineers typically, and they'll start to talk about the lighting, they'll start to talk about the ventilation, the heating and those sort of things. And obviously there's a lot of conversations there around health and well-being, and how can we create a place that obviously is sustainable, but that also is really well fine-tuned to optimize human health. And that really needs to be about, producing clean air, creating spaces in which people are thermally comfortable, and, starting to think about things like the acoustic impact of all this ventilation as well. How is that going to affect how people feel within a space? And then finally, there's absolutely no point us designing these really healthy buildings and then just walking away and having people run them in perhaps an unhealthy way. So a big part of well and a big part of what we do is about ensuring that buildings are run, operated, and sort of the HR side of things is all done in a very healthy way. Because we might design it so that all the materials are really healthy, they're not off-gassing lots of nasty VOCs. But if you're then having cleaners come in and using lots of really unhealthy cleaning products that are releasing all kinds of chemicals into the air, it might sort of be a bit counterintuitive, and it might undo some of the hard work that the design team has put in to get to that stage. So there's a few ways that we measure healthy buildings. Michal will be pleased to hear, I'm sure, that we tend to recommend to all our clients really to go for well. Obviously, there's certain projects that I'll come to talk about in a minute where well might not necessarily work still. But for the vast majority of our clients, we say that well is the way to go because we believe it is the most rigorous, it's the most thorough, it's the most scientifically researched. And ultimately, it probably is the most challenging to achieve, but with good reason. It's challenging for people to achieve because it is so rigorous and they test every last element to make sure that you're actually doing everything that you've said you're going to do. If you've said you're going to have low VOCs, you have to demonstrate you have low VOCs. And if you've said you're going to filter your water, they will test the water quality to make sure that it is good quality. So really, it's so much more thorough than any of the other standards, which is why we believe it's the most impressive health certification you can get. And I won't go into this too much, the standard itself, because Michal's given us a really good background on that. But really kind of wanted to talk a bit more about how it would work on a day-to-day basis for us. So on a typical project, and I'm sure there are people listening who are interested to know how it works or would potentially want to do a well project themselves. We would typically get approached by a client who says we're looking at this. And our first step would be to do what we call a gap analysis. So actually, we will have a conversation with the design team, with the client, work out what their key goals are, what the building or the design is already doing, what it has the potential to do. So is there, do we have the scope to maybe add openable windows, or do we have the scope to improve the ventilation, or whatever it might be, or to potentially to change the specification of materials so that we've got healthier materials. And what we'll really do then is try to get a handle on what sort of score they might be going for, because if they're struggling to even get all of the preconditions done and optimizations seem to be challenging, they may only be looking at a bronze or silver. But at the same time, we've had some clients come to us recently and they've got a project, they want it to be all singing, all dancing, they've got really high goals and they're really willing to go all out and get this highest level of certification. And so actually off the back of a gap analysis, we'll discover that they really could go for platinum. So at that point, we'll kind of decide roughly where we're aiming and then take it forward. And at that stage, we'll start to work with the design team alongside their progression of the design. So as they go through those different design stages, we will be there kind of every step of the way to help answer their questions, to keep reminding them, have you thought about how this design change or this value engineering decision might have an impact on the well standard or on how healthy the building is? And then really, as we approach sort of completion of the project, it's then about evidence gathering and really making sure that we can prove and document and evidence everything that the building is doing to show to the IWBI, look, we really have created a healthy building here. And then at that point, we'll submit all the information. They'll come verify everything. Sorry, that's a very quick explanation, but we haven't got a huge amount of time. I also wanted to touch very quickly on what we do when we have a project that comes to us where perhaps we can't do well certification. We've had a few examples of these. Maybe it's a kind of holiday cottage or something where they want it to be maybe an eco lodge. They want it to be very healthy, very sustainable. But for a project that small, it just doesn't kind of work to do well certification. So in those sort of instances, we will use something called our own design for wellbeing framework. And you can see here, we've got a series of pillars that are sort of similar to the well building standard, but rather than being based more on kind of the building and the building envelope or the building design, it's actually more focused on kind of the human and what the potential needs of people using those spaces might be. So again, of course, it does cover similar topics because a healthy building is a healthy building, but this is just a slightly different way that we find it gives us a little bit more flexibility, and we can kind of scale it to smaller projects if need be, or even up to a master plan if that's what the client is keen to do. And you can see here, based on kind of these 7 key categories, which again, I won't go into right now, but they are fairly self-explanatory. I wanted to touch quickly on, particularly as we're talking about interiors, the impact that spaces can have on our mental health. And this is something that's really important to me. I'm very passionate about this because when I was in my mid-20s, I actually suffered with burnout myself and basically gave myself an anxiety disorder. I got myself to the point where my mental health was having a really negative impact on my quality of life, on my physical health. And so actually that really that's kind of what sent me off on a slight side road away from being a traditional architect and becoming really interested in this area. Off the back of that, I basically began to research the ways in which design and interior spaces, and to an extent exterior spaces as well, can affect our mental health. And that led me to write this book called Happy by Design, because I discovered there's a huge body of evidence out there showing that the design of places that we create really does have a massive impact on people's behavior and on people's mental health and their mental well-being. As I mentioned, when my mental health deteriorated, it had a big impact on my physical health too. So I think it's really important to note that the two really do overlap, and there's such a strong connection there. If we're making a decision that's going to impact someone's mental health, it will likely have a positive knock-on effect on their physical health and vice versa. So we need to really think about this very holistically. But that said, I think it's a little bit easier to say, okay, if we make this design change, it will have a very measurable impact on air quality, but it's a little bit less tangible with mental health. So I think we just have to sort of almost be slightly, have even more evidence behind us and be slightly stronger in terms of our case and our argument to prove to people, actually, there's loads of research showing that high ceilings can impact the way people feel or whatever it might be. And at Echist, for us, it's really important as well that we are constantly pushing forward in this area. I kind of mentioned sustainability already, and I feel like we are slightly behind, maybe 10, 15 years behind sustainability, and the area of health and well-being in buildings is still slightly catching up. But that's really exciting because that means it really feels like we're almost forging new ground here. We're constantly improving the buildings that get put out there, which is amazing and really exciting. And there's new research coming out all the time. So off the back of this, I've written another book, which is coming out early next year. And I think I can say the name. I think it's going to be called the Happy Design Toolkit. And really that's looking more at actual specific design techniques and things and objects and items that we can bring into buildings to kind of have a positive impact on people's mental well-being. But at Echist, we're heavily involved with Well too. So I sit on the Well Mind Advisory. So that's one of their Well concepts, helping to advise them on how to create healthier buildings for mental well-being. And we're constantly doing talks like this, lectures to universities, things like that to kind of spread the word and really get more people involved with this exciting area of design. And where I've got about 2 minutes left, I think, so I'll rattle very quickly through just some selected projects so you guys can see kind of what this looks like in action. This was a project we worked on with, this is down in Kent in southeast England. So we worked alongside an architect here to win an RIBA competition. And this was basically to create a new nature centre and wellbeing centre for the local community. So you can obviously see there lots of references to nature, biophilia, natural language, and all of these kind of things. This is one that we've got going on at the moment, which is really exciting. This is in a sort of fairly, I'd say up and coming is maybe a nice way to say it, but an area of London that hasn't necessarily had as much spent on it over the years as some other parts of London. And we are working with amazing architects called Office S&M to create a new wellbeing-led community space. So the idea really is that this is kind of an arts centre. It's lots of activities and learning things and community activities going on in this space. And we've been brought onto the project to really help ensure that it's super healthy and it's really promoting all of those important elements like community. This is an example of residential on which we are currently pursuing WELL certification. We're not quite there yet, just putting the finishing touches on, and hopefully we'll be going in for it fairly soon. But this is now occupied, which is really exciting. And there's a whole range of things throughout this co-living scheme that we put in place to ensure that it can target WELL certification. And as you can see here, real focus on, again, natural materials, lots of light, lots of fresh air, lots of social spaces. And then at the other end of the scale, we've got kind of very luxury residential that we've been working on too. And this is a project called the Bryanston, and that's Hyde Park. You can see out of the window there. And the client's thinking here was really that if we're providing luxury homes, they absolutely have to be the very best in terms of human health too. So we've been pursuing well on this project, which is soon to be completed. And then this is an office space, again, just to show, as Michal was saying, you really can use it across such a wide range of projects. We've got a number of office projects on the go at the moment, but this was Uncommon, which is a kind of co-working space in Holborn, central London. And we've been working with them to achieve WELL pre-certification, which is kind of what you go for before you go for the full certification. So that is everything from me. Sorry, I think I've run slightly over, but I hope that was interesting. And of course, any questions, please do put them in the box, and we'll talk about them now. Thank you.
Okay, Ben, thank you very much. Very interesting talk. The word interesting is something you should never use at the end of a presentation. I know that, but I really appreciated what you've been telling us about WELL. I think it gave us a very good insight into what that WELL building standard actually can do to buildings. Now, I have one question which is actually on the website of Eckert, where you talk about your core beliefs. And your third core belief is that a building should have the power to inspire, grow with you, and adapt to a changing needs. Now, is that part of WELL building standard, this adaptation, growing needs, or is it something that you put in extra? And what does it mean?
So, yeah, I think really what we're saying there is that buildings should go above and beyond, because at the moment, I know certainly in the UK, and I'm sure in many other countries, we have sort of base building standards, and you have to meet these. What we're really saying there is that buildings can go above and beyond these. They can be inspirational to people. They can help us to not just get through the day, but they can help us to thrive. And we know that because buildings can have such a big impact on people's behaviors, they can obviously, if we're not careful, they can have a very negative impact on people's behaviors. They can encourage people to sort of spiral, performance to drop, to become very negative. But if we design them really well and we fill them with light and plants and things like that, actually they can encourage people to live, to better themselves, to challenge themselves, to improve every day. And that's really what our goal is. And yes, in answer to your question, I'm sure Michal would want me to say that a lot of those are covered within the WELL building standard.
Okay.
There's lots of references to connecting to community, creating places that reference culture and that inspire people, and have references to art and all of these amazing things that we can put into buildings.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's ask Michal to join the discussion. There's not too much time left, and there are some interesting questions that have come in. I have one very practical question, which is for you, Michal, which is about the enhanced HVAC, so heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Is that a consideration for WELL? Enhanced HVAC.
Volatile organic compounds, you mean?
No.
I think it's HVAC. Sorry, so that's HVAC systems, isn't it? So that's the ventilation. And,
HVAC. You call it HVAC.
Air
Okay.
conditioning, HVAC system.
Yeah.
So could you repeat one more time? What about this?
What about this? If this is a consideration for WELL, apparently the person asking the question does not see it coming back into the WELL standard. HVAC.
I would say that we have dedicated concept area where we describe or require things connected with HVAC system.
Yeah.
So appropriate filters, appropriate air rate. So to improve indoor environment, air quality, we have plenty of requirements and things connected with HVAC system, thermal comfort, and many more. I will not give you an exact example, but I think I would repeat, we have plenty of requirements. This is really important topic for all of us, and it's for sure topic dedicated in WELL certification. So
okay, I see Ben nodding as well, so that should be the right direction. I have one question which is about our business, which is manufacturing and selling, furnishing floors in buildings. When I talk about it, people think that our business is there's a new building and in goes a new floor. Whereas, as a matter of fact, that's only 30% of the business. 70% of the business is renovation business. And what I see you using, Ben, as examples, and what I hear you talk about, Michal, when it comes to the WELL building standard, it looks like this is more concentrated on new buildings. Or is there a mix? Renovation, new buildings? If you care to answer?
Yeah, I would say, as obviously at the moment working on 5 or 6 different WELL certification projects, I would say more of them are existing buildings that we are redoing rather than new builds, and particularly obviously in central London. A lot of our projects are based in London, and so it often makes sense to keep the building fabric, and obviously from a sustainability point of view as well, it makes a lot more sense to try and retain the structure, whether it's concrete frame, steel frame, to retain that and to renovate that. So yes, I would say maybe some of the images I showed were slightly unrepresentative, but we do a lot of renovation projects.
So also for you, Michal, that there's only one well building standard. There's not a well building standard for renovation and a well building standard for new building.
It was for exist, yeah, it used to be. So right now we concentrated on well certification and well core.
Okay, the core, yeah.
Like everything is everything is dedicated for each type of building. So you have of course you have some requirements when you can choose well certification or core. Core is different one with different points comparing to well certification. But yes, everything is connected with well certification. I will add something what's already Ben mentioned, that of course it's much easier to implement well in new building, but it's totally possible to do well certification in existing building. As I said, it used to be in version 1. So dedicated for existing new and existing buildings. So I have no idea and I have no knowledge about statistics, but I think it's totally possible to do both new well certification in new and existing buildings.
When I was preparing for the webinar, it came to my mind that in the 1990s there was this notion of the sick building syndrome. And there were professors, also in Holland, Piet Vroon is a very important name here, who were actually claiming that people got sick in the new buildings that we were building. Now that was the 1990s. How come it took so long before health and well-being became a serious topic? Before you started your work in 2014, before ECHIS started their advisory work? It's a huge gap. Has something changed, or did it pop up and go away, this sick building syndrome? Is it still there?
From my perspective, it was really necessary to raise awareness of people, of companies. Right now, we can see many manufacturers are trying to follow trends and try to obtain certificates or try to make some tests for their products and try to follow certificates. So I think the awareness, education of people, of companies was crucial recently, and nowadays it's really important topic. We are talking a lot about indoor environment, about air quality.
Yes.
We know statistics that 90% of time we spend in inside buildings. So from my perspective, it was a reason that market has changed when it comes to quality of everything, of air, water, thermal, sound, acoustic levels, so on. So I think the awareness is the main the main word for this change.
Was there also a technical improvement that all of a sudden we could do more? I mean, it's easy to build an office tower block with an air conditioning and close all the windows, but now everything also technically seems to be much more sophisticated. Is that also your experience, Ben?
Yeah, that's definitely true. And we're seeing technology year on year get more affordable. Some of the well features that were quite hard to achieve, even 3 or 4 years ago are now becoming easier because the technology is becoming more affordable. So we're definitely seeing that. But no, I would echo Michal's point. It's for me, it's about public perception. And often, unfortunately, with a lot of these things, it's kind of who shouts loudest. And in the 90s, I mean, I can't really speak from experience because I was still at primary school back then, but when people were talking about sick building syndrome, but there was a real push on sustainability. And as I've already said, with good reason, we are facing a climate crisis and sustainability has to be talked about. But I think people were so focused on the planet and, the impact that buildings were having on the planet. There's almost a feeling that it's slightly the impact that they were having on the people using them was kind of forgotten. And I believe the two really can exist in harmony. Of course, we've had that question about HVAC systems, and there are always going to be challenges when we're trying to create healthier indoor environments. Maybe that will take more energy in some situations. We might need better air filtration units and things like that. However, I do believe the two really kind of generally align and generally feed into one another. So I think there's been a realization in the last few years that actually we need our buildings to do more for us as well as for the planet. And definitely the public perception in the UK, I'm not sure if this has been the same across the continent, but in terms of things like mental health and generally health and well-being, I think has improved a great deal, even from when I think about 10 years ago when I had my own challenges with my mental health. The stigma has decreased a lot. People are talking about this conversation way more, and I think that's really positive and really healthy.
Yeah, okay. Talking about health and talking about aging population, the changes in society, Michal, you already mentioned the effects of COVID. Is something changing because we as a society are changing after COVID?
Absolutely, yes. I gave you some examples for like we created specific ratings or guidelines, so we try to be like face current situation on the market. So for example, health and safety rating. But yeah, definitely yes, we are facing new challenges. COVID will be with us for I think many more months or even years. So we have to adjust ourselves. We have to adjust our projects, buildings, houses, residential units, everything, because right now we see that very popular option of work is hybrid work. So we spend time in our offices and we spend time in our homes. So this is really important to like create proper space for us, and then we can feel safe, resilient. We can feel comfortable. So this is really important to create appropriate place and space for us right now today. And I will repeat, people are more aware about that. So this is why they demand is and they expect, like their expectation is on a really high level. So we try to fulfill this expectations.
Ben, there's another question from the audience, which is about the using or applying the well building standard. And the question is that sometimes there seems to be conflicting needs of sustainable operation of buildings and creating a good indoor air quality. For example, CO2 levels below 1000 ppm versus a ventilation demand. How do you tackle that idea of ventilation, fresh air, and being compliant to the standard?
Yeah, it is a really good question, and kind of I touched upon it in my previous response, but it's something that we're constantly thinking about. I think it's worth saying, as I said, there is a general synergy, and when we've got in the UK, we tend to use BREEAM as our primary certification in terms of sustainability. There's about a 30% overlap between BREEAM and WELL certification. So it is worth saying a lot of the things that we're doing in WELL are having a positive impact in terms of sustainability too. But yes, you're always going to get there are certain situations in which actually the healthiest things to do for the people who are using that building might not necessarily be they might require extra energy. They might not be as positive for the planet as we would like. And that's when we have to, I think that's where we as the experts actually kind of earn our money, and we can really add value to a project. Yes. Obviously, we would always start with looking at whether a natural ventilation approach could be the way forward. But of course, if you've got a school and it's right next to a main road, we know the huge negative health impacts that's going to have on those children if they're breathing in that polluted air all day, every day, not just on their lung health, but on their heart health, and even like their kind of their brain development and all of those sort of things. So sometimes we do just have to say, actually, this is not good enough for the people using this building. We may have to use some extra energy here to achieve that. That said, the grid is constantly getting greener. We're constantly encouraging the use of sustainable technologies too. And ultimately, the building has to be seen as a whole. And I think as a holistic approach, WELL will have a positive impact generally on the planet.
There's one word which I missed in your presentations, and it was present in all the other webinars that we've had so far, and that was on color, that was on the effects of the brain and the indoor environment, and that's biophilia and the color green. Is that part of the WELL building standard to have a green, airy environment? Michal?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, of course, yes.
Okay.
Also really important topic when it comes to mental health, if I can say that in this way. So it's really good to have a lot of greenery, a lot of biophilia. We have features describing requirements when it comes to green areas. So definitely, yes, you can find this topic in WELL certification, and it provides a really nice, and in this way you can provide a really nice space where you spend your time. So the simple answer is yes.
I saw you nodding as well, Ben. There's a plant behind you.
There is a plant behind me, yeah. And it's worth saying both my books have got an entire chapter based on nature, because nature is so important. The great thing about it is there are so many studies by environmental psychologists about the effects of nature on particularly our mental well-being, our productivity, our memory, all kinds of things. Putting flowers in a room with students can improve their memory and their test scores, which is amazing. I hope I mentioned biophilia in my presentation. I'm sorry if I didn't, but yes, it is.
Maybe I missed it.
Really important.
Can also
and,
be.
We absolutely do have the evidence to show the impact it can have. So that's why it does play a big role, particularly in that mind concept of the WELL standard too.
Yeah. There's a big area out there which is education and healthcare facilities. Mm-hmm. And what we see happening is that, or what I sort of hear is that it's well established. So the WELL building standard, well established in offices, well established in some residential, leisure environments. But when it comes to healthcare and when it comes to education facilities, it seems to be less so. Is that true, or is there a shift towards those types of buildings? How do you see that, Ben?
We have to, in this kind of buildings, we have to keep specific conditions of air quality. So it's like a little bit more difficult to obtain, maybe not to obtain, but to convince owners of this kind of building. But of course, it is possible to implement. We have already launched K-12 guidance for schools. We have like plenty of case studies or some examples of case studies when it comes to healthcare and WELL certification. So it's not so popular as like commercial buildings, but definitely yes, it is possible. As I mentioned on my presentation, WELL is dedicated for each type of building. So it is possible to implement WELL both in healthcare buildings and schools.
Is that not the biggest challenge for you, Ben, to actually move that direction, to look at the education?
Definitely.
Market?
We are really, really keen to get working on some education projects and some healthcare projects. Obviously, because as you've said, it's two of the areas where we can have the biggest impact on human health. There's a logistic problem here, certainly in the UK at least, in that you look at an office project, it tends to be a private developer, a one-off client, and they can simply approach you and say, we want to do a healthy building, we want to go for WELL or whatever it might be. It's a lot more challenging with things like healthcare projects or schools because they tend to be publicly owned. It's part of a much bigger, there's far more hoops that they have to jump through, and there's a lot more decision makers and a lot more sort of separation between who makes the decisions and who runs the building as well. So logistically, it's tricky, but if there's anyone out there who wants us to help them with a school or a healthcare project, we would absolutely love that, and that's one of our next big goals.
Okay. You already mentioned in your presentation the financial advancement that building owners can get when they have a WELL building certification. But how does that work? Is there a certain validity to the certification? Does it have to be renewed? Is it there when it's being given? How does that work, Michal? Do I have to pay every year?
It depends. A WELL certification, for example, must be recertified every year, so you need to renew the certificates. Okay. From my perspective, this is really good because it's like we still need to prove or provide information that our building is on a high level when it comes to green and sustainability aspects. Health and safety ratings must be renewed every year. Okay. This is mainly because of this pandemic and specific requirements comprised of WELL certification, but this is mainly about and connected with operational stage of the building. So it's necessary to keep a building safe and in high quality when it comes to.
Is that
safe.
Is that also what you do, Ben? That once you have finished a project, that you will check it every year, or that you will recertify, or?
So yeah, we help clients to arrange this. There's requirements like ongoing monitoring where you have to ensure you're taking regular air quality measurements, water quality measurements. So what we'll help our clients to do is basically know what that process is, know what they need to do to maintain the certification, and support them in that process. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. We've run out of our available time. I would like to thank both of you. You can see that I'm also in a very well certified environment with all the palms and all the floor covering. There's even a nice chair. If I move a little bit, I can go and sit in it. But the truth is, this is only a small mock-up. This is a small studio in Amsterdam. But I can vouch also for myself that being in a good working environment, being in a good residential home, being in a nice hotel, a nice holiday home, a modern green hospital, a nice new school building, actually works, actually gives people more pleasure, gives people more satisfaction, creates a certain vibe and creativity, which I would like to thank both of you for you for maintaining the standard, Michal, and for you, Ben, for doing your work at Eckert. We will share this webinar in the form of a video to each and every one. The presentations we checked with the presenters, you can also use them, giving the credits to the presenters, of course, and you can visit both websites to learn more. Thank you very much. I started with the video. I will not end with the video. There will be a closing screen, and that will be it. Thank you, goodbye, and see you the next time. Thank you, Ben. Thank you,
very
Michal.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.